line isn't even going around and it's not picking up my PowerPoint. Alright, so I'm going to show you a few skills. Fundamental motor skills are things like walking, running, jumping with 2 feet, hopping on 1 foot, skipping, galloping, and then when we look at object control skills, things like kicking a ball, throwing a ball, catching a ball, striking a ball. What else? What else is on there? Another one. So we're looking at skills that create a foundation for physical activity. They're not sport skills necessarily, right? They're not sport level anyway. They're fundamental level. So what I mean by that is that when you reach competency at the fundamental level, then you would be ready to be taught a more complicated version or a more sport-driven version of that skill. So like kicking a ball is just running up and kicking the ball, okay? Once you can do that really well, then you can start to teach them to kick a ball to a teammate or run down the field and pick a ball up and dribble with it for a little while, okay? So we have to have these fundamental skills. We're going to talk a lot about this in class as well. We need to have these fundamental level skills in order to then progress on to other skills that we can use either for sport or for keeping healthy, right? Or just for recreation activities, okay? And the interesting thing for me, the reason that my population of choice to play with and to research are toddlers and preschoolers is that, and we will review this idea in a few lessons, is the fact that the brain research indicates that these gross motor skills, so we're not talking about fine motor skills, not tying shoelaces or doing up buttons or writing your name with a pencil, right? Fine motor skills are a different kettle of fish. But these gross motor fundamental skills should be learned by the time the child is 6, even 5, depending on which resource you read. Right? So 5 or 6 is kind of the time where the brain is ready to start learning something more. So we should have got these fundamental skills by then. The problem is that we don't have PE teachers at preschool, right? Parents aren't aware of the fact that they should be working on these skills and that children should be able to do them before they go to school, okay? And over and over during the semester, we're going to see that not having these skills by the time you go to elementary school really then starts to knock on to your ability to enjoy PE and moving, right? So then we start to see children dropping out, children getting overweight, because they're not enjoying movement, because they don't have the skill set in time, right? So, I'm going to look at run. So on your sheet, on your MSU chart, run is, they've got the locomotor skills lower down, all right? And you can see that the chart is split up into columns. So the idea that we're looking at here is that when I learn to run, or when I watch anybody learning to run, I will see them pass through these stages, okay? Now, the stages, remember the concept I said in class about universality and variability, okay? It applies very strongly here. We have these very predictable stages of development for running. And I can guarantee you that if you watch someone who's not a good runner, or someone who's a beginner, or a small child, right? It doesn't have to be a young child. It can be anyone who's not very competent at running, right? That you're going to identify one of these stages. The individuality part of it, the variability part, comes in because how quickly I move through these stages depends partly on my genetics, right? How talented am I? Partly on my environment. How much practice do I get? Do I have parents who value gross motor skills and playing outside? Or do I have parents who value music and musical instruments to the exclusion of running around outside and playing outside, right? So, if we had been going to the playground, you would have seen some of these with little children, but you can, as I said, you can also see them with any age person, okay? So stage one, I'm going to take my shoes off here so I can muck around. Stage one, arms are held high and the individual is making flat-footed contact, so there's no heel-toe, there's no real push-off, which means that when you look at this move, it's very up and down, and it doesn't move forwards very quickly, okay? So, if I saw someone other than a young child doing this, I'd be quite worried, because this stage one of running you rarely see in anyone other than a young child. But once we get to stage two and stage three, now we're seeing things that we might see with older children or even young teenagers or even certain adults, okay? So stage two, the arms have dropped down. What happens as we work through these stages is that the brain starts to unconsciously reorganize the movement skills so that it's more efficient, okay? So the arms come down, it's still pretty flat-footed, but it becomes more noisy, and that noise means there's more force being applied, okay? And as they move through stage two, then you might start to get some heel-toe towards the end of stage two. So think of this as a continuum, okay? Stage three is a big changing point because it's the first time that we see arm movement in running, okay? But when we look at the characteristics for stage three, the kind of arm movement we're seeing tends to be very straight, so it's not this kind of efficient arm pump. It's this straight, sort of funny arm swing, okay? Now, I want you to think back to our triangle yesterday, all right? Our constraints idea. all right? And I want you to try to visualize a young lady who runs quite regularly, right? And you see her out running around the neighborhood in her tracksuit or her leggings and her t-shirt and her running shoes, right? And her run looks pretty effective and efficient, right? Now try to picture the same young lady late for class in a skirt and high heels and a book bag. Now what does her running pattern look like? It almost certainly does not look like it did when you saw her run around the neighborhood. Okay? Remember that if I change a constraint, the expectation of that theory is I'm going to see a different movement pattern. So I changed her shoes, that's equipment. I gave her heels. I changed her clothes, that would be equipment too. Right? I changed her mindset because she's late for class. So she's trying to hurry in inappropriate clothing. Okay? So I'm hoping that you can see those two pictures. So when we're looking at this, whilst we typically would expect this to be a younger person, it doesn't have to be a younger person depending upon the constraints, right? What if you have someone who is very overweight or even obese trying to run, right? They may look like stage 2. They may not even have any arm swing depending how overweight they are. Okay? So the point of this is to help you with young children, because this is what we will see, right? But it's also to give you a measurement to look at someone and go, huh, that is very odd, right? Stage 4, remember this is fundamental running. Stage 4, we start to see some elbow bend, and we've got good heel-toe contact. We probably don't have very much forward lean yet, and we don't necessarily have big long strides. So stage 4 doesn't look like an Olympic sprinter, 100-meter sprinter, right? This is not the end of running development. This is the end of fundamental running development. And if I want to do anything else, I have to be able to achieve stage 4. Does that make sense? And these are some old, they're taken from old film, very old film, not by me, by previous researchers. I personally would not label this young lady at the bottom stage 4 fundamental running, right? I think she's way past stage 4 fundamental running, okay? But it gives you something to look at to help you put the words into pictures for yourself, right? Also remember, if you've got your textbook, get onto the website, get your key code sorted out, get into that website. There's lots and lots of film clips there to help you visualize all of this. So hopping, hopping is, you've got to be a little bit careful with hopping, because the word hop gets misused in American everyday language, all right? Because bunny hops, right? And I watch the teachers all the time. Let's do bunny hops. That's not hopping. That's jumping. You have 2 feet on the floor, right? Hopping is 1 foot to the same foot, all right? So, hopping, we also have 4 stages. Not all the skills have 4. A couple of them have 5. Some of them only have 3. Okay? So stage 1 looks a little bit like this. So the leg that's in the air is stuck out in front and the person is leaning back a little bit. All right? And the hands tend to be up here to help them balance. And this is really not very efficient at all, and it's quite hard work, right? So luckily, it doesn't take too long, if you give that individual practice, for the brain to go, oh my goodness, we've got to change this up a little bit, what can we do? Okay? So then what happens is drops the leg down. Now the knee stays in front, but often you'll see the foot behind the standing jumping leg. Alright? And we might start to get, because the leg has come down, we might start to get a little bit of forward lean. Tends to depend on whether you're asking them to hop on the spot or whether you're asking them to hop forwards, I have found. Okay? Stage 3, now the leg has dropped even further, so it's kind of next to the jumping leg, the hopping leg, and now I can really lean forwards a lot. Okay? Stage 4 is not fundamental hopping. MSU stands for Michigan State University. The group of researchers who put this assessment together spent heaps and heaps and heaps of time. And so when I say I don't think stage 4 is fundamental, they did the research, not me. But I've spent a lot of time on the ground teaching people of all ages movement skills. And you want to try this. Pendular hopping is really difficult, right? So you're going to hop, swing the leg and swing the arms at the same time. I used to run a fitness session for a soccer team, way back in another life. And they hated it when I was the person who was in charge of the fitness session. Because a friend and I would trade off depending on what else we had to do and what other classes we were teaching. And they used to groan when I came in to the gym because they knew I was going to make them do this and I was going to make them do like elephant crawls and all kinds of weird, wonderful things. So yeah, they used to go, oh no, not you. So in my opinion and in my experience, I would stop fundamental hopping at stage 3. But as I said, I didn't run the research. They ran the research, and in their opinion, fundamental hopping stops here. It's a difference of opinion. Okay? It's not the end of the world. All right, so again, some photos from the research that they drew out so that people had a visual to go with the description of the characteristics. And we're not going to go through all the skills that are on your chart, so I want you to spend some time looking at the other skills as well, so that you've got an idea of how we expect those to develop. Throwing. Throwing's interesting because biomechanically throwing is very, very complicated. all right? If you are interested in throwing for whatever reason, softball, baseball, football, you know, any kind of sports where a one-handed throw is an important part of the game, there's heaps and heaps of research on throwing. Partly because a lot of people who go into exercise science and into these fields were athletes, and so they study skills they enjoy doing, right? So there's tons of research on throwing. Hugely, hugely complicated mechanical skill at the sport level, right? Fundamental throwing, not quite so complicated, but it's difficult for the brain, and I'll show you why in just a minute. Stage 1, right? Stage 1 is this. Right? I wind up, I chuck, and most of the action is happening at the elbow, and the ball goes straight down to the floor. Very much like the little girl we watched throw yesterday on the film. I would have put her in stage 1. Okay? No foot movement, no rotation, no arm swing. Give them the ball, chuck the ball. Right? You'll see it every time, promise you. If you don't see it, that child has thrown the ball before. Okay? Stage 2, brain's going okay. I want the ball to go further down the room. That wasn't very good, it just went straight down to the floor. And I'm watching someone else throw, hopefully, because modeling is really important, right? So the brain goes, okay, got to do something else with this arm. So it does this, right? Okay. Call it slamming the door. If you've got someone in this stage, you don't want to be standing there. Right? Because the ball is not going forwards, the ball is coming right at your face. Okay? If they move the arm hard enough, so probably not a teeny tiny person, but someone who's getting a bit more confident and, right? If they do this hard enough, it makes their whole body move around. But it's not exactly rotation in the way we consider rotation within throwing or kicking, or it's not segmental, it's just that the force of the arm moves the whole body around with it. Okay? Stage 3. Again, stage 3 is a crucial stage. And it's crucial because it's the first time we see the feet move. Right? In stage 1 and stage 2, there's no foot movement involved. Stage 3, we finally see the individual step forwards. And what happens is that. Right? And this is a really good skill to watch adults do, to get the understanding that these stages, whilst we would expect them for little people, aren't only for little people. If you watch me throw on the playground and I'm not thinking about what I do that, because I'm not a ball person, right? I was a gymnast and a dancer and a trampolinist. I didn't do very much with object control except the odd PE lesson at school, right? So I have very little experience in throwing. So if I'm not thinking and there's a stone in the middle of the playground, I pick the stone up and I throw it over the fence, and then I'm like, I did it again. Right? If I'm going to step in opposition, I have to really be paying attention to what I'm doing. So it's stage 3 is a stage where individuals get stuck if they don't then get more practice and more teaching and more modeling. Does that make sense? Okay. Stage 4, the upper body looks very similar to stage 3. The difference for stage 4 is that this child, person, will step forward with the other foot. But there's no rotation, so the hips and the shoulders face the way the ball is being thrown, and they throw like that. Okay? So we have opposition. That's mechanically crucial, because once I've got opposition, I can turn my hips, I can take a bigger step, I can do all kinds of weird things with this arm, right? When I'm stepping ipsilaterally or homolaterally, depending on which book you're looking at, right? This is ipsilateral, same side. When I do this, I can't twist. There's no way to add any rotation in here. It doesn't help anything, right? Stage 5, in stage 5 we start to see some rotation. So in stage 5, I'm going to have a little bit, not exactly a backswing, but at least the ball is going to come down and then up, and I'm going to have a little bit of rotation. So the young boy that we watched, so we watched the little tiny girl throw, and then we watched that young boy throw. I would say he is transitioning into stage 5. He was stepping a bit to the side instead of forwards. But you could see him trying to move his shoulders and his hips around. Right? So I would put him, probably if I watched him 3 or 4 times throw the ball, I would say he's here or almost here, depending on how consistent he is. Again, some pictures. Right, this one here is good because this shows you that I don't have that full backswing. Remember again, this is not the end of throwing. This doesn't look like a Major League Baseball pitcher or a football, is it the quarterback who throws the ball? A football quarterback. I should know this by now. A quarterback, right? This isn't the end of throwing development. It's the end of fundamental throwing development. It means I have to be here in order to learn something more complicated, more specific to a sport. Okay, how many more have I got on here? Hold on a minute. Oh, kicking is the last one. Okay. All right, so kicking. Kicking has some other constraints involved here now. Okay, so stage 1, the ball is stationary, which is the simplest version of the skill for the interaction-wise for the ball, right? I have to have the ball stationary. Once the ball is moving, this skill gets completely complicated and difficult. So I have the ball stationary on the floor, and I ask the person to run up and kick the ball. They may or may not run or walk. They may not even bother. They may just go up to the ball. And then they're going to stop. And what you see is them toe the ball, right? So there's no wind up with the swinging leg, right? They don't step to the side of the ball and give themselves room to kick the ball, okay? If they toe hard, they're going to tip themselves backwards, so you might see them move backwards afterwards. Stage 2, generally again, even if they run up to the ball, they're going to stop before they get there. It's not a run and a kick, it's not a combined movement, right? But in stage 2, you will see the foot come up to the back, right? And because of the leg swing, as you'll see when we get to chapter 3, because of the leg swing, the arms automatically swing. It's not necessarily a conscious opposition of arms and legs, but mechanically that's what happens, right? Try it. When you've got a little bit of space around you, try swinging your leg really hard and keeping your arms still. You can't, not without falling over, right? Stage 3 is the first time you really see them linked together. So I've got an approach that's moving. It's probably a little bit slow, but at least it leads to kicking the ball. They don't stop and then kick. And stage 4, we would expect a relatively fast approach, a little bit of backward lean maybe as they swing the leg. If they swing the leg hard enough, you might see them hop or you might see them step forwards onto that leg. Again, still doesn't look like a penalty kick in a soccer game, right? There's more to come, but I have to get here first. So why do we care about this idea? Okay? Because I think oftentimes students come to ex-phys, which I think is really a tricky science class, and they don't have very much trouble with it because it relates to their own training and their own movement, and they can make all the connections and it's easy. Motor development is theoretically simpler, but it's a bit more subtle, right? Why do I care about these stages, right? If it's my child, I just keep throwing the ball at them and eventually they're going to kick the ball, right? So why do I care? For a couple of reasons. One, if I am teaching this, right? So let me go back to throwing, because that's a good example. Bless you. If I am a coach, a parent, a teacher, and we're working on throwing, right? In my head, a throw looks like this. Maybe. I can't throw, as you probably can tell. Right? So that's what I'm trying to teach this person, right? Walk in, swing your arm, take a big step, turn sideways. But the person I'm teaching is in stage 3. Right? You cannot go from stage 3 to whatever developmental stage the picture in this teacher's head is. Right? You can't. The brain can't do that. The brain has to go through these steps and alter the movement pattern bit by bit. So, several things can happen in that situation then. One, if I'm the teacher, and I'm not understanding what is happening, I'm going to get cross, right? And I'm going to get to, what are you doing? I've told you 5 times, take a great big step, turn sideways, swing your arm, right? Bad, bad, bad. Not the way to approach teaching movement skills. But, understandably frustrated, that could come out like that. Right? 2, the person you're teaching, even, to be quite honest, even if they're only 4, younger than 4 probably you can get away with. But by the time they're 4, certainly by the time they're 5, they know they're not doing what you're asking them to do. They can't do it. And then they get upset because they're letting you down. They get upset because they're failing. And then they don't want to practice anymore. They're going to go do something else. No, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go sit in the sand. We can't learn motor skills if we don't practice. The only way to learn is to practice. So the only way to get them from stage 3 to stage 4 to stage 5 is to practice. But if they quit, they're not practicing. Right? So, I have to understand this because I watch this kid or this adult, right? I watch this person and I see stage 3. The research says the next thing that will happen is stage 4. So, I don't have to waste my time coaching stage 10, right? I can coach stage 4. The only thing I've got to concentrate on is getting them to step with the other foot. Right? That's all I have to do. If they're in stage 3, my job is to get them to step with the other foot. Puts them in stage 4. Now I can look at stage 5 and I can go, okay, what am I going to ask them to do that will help them start to create this rotation? They don't get frustrated because they succeeded. I don't get frustrated because they succeeded. And everybody keeps practicing. Right? Has to be fun. Has to be fun. The only time we do things that aren't fun is when we have to and we have no choice. Right? If you're not a math person, honestly tell me that you would have taken 2 or 3 maths classes unless you had to. History, biology, whatever, right? The only time we do things that aren't fun is when we have to. Because it's an obstacle on the road that I want to go down. Right? If it's an obstacle on a road I don't care about, you know what I'm doing? I'm going, oh, yeah, I'm going to try this road instead. If we're going to get children, teenagers, adults, elderly adults, active, healthy, moving, we have to create a stable foundation of fundamental motor skills for them to build on for the rest of their lives. Right? We have to. It's the only way. because we don't do things. Who likes failing, right?